I have type 1 diabetes. During my first NHS appointment, I go into the doctor's office and I see that he has already reviewed my blood test result. So I sat down, and the first thing he says to me is, "If you don't keep up a good blood glucose average, I'm going to have to take your pump away." I was shocked, stunned that he was threatening to take away the very technology I need to stay alive. By doing so, that is akin to blaming me for how my body reacts to my daily management. The nature of chronic illness means that the person will have to live with it for the rest of their life. Sure, we hear heroic stories of people climbing Mount Everest, excelling in music, really beating the odds to overcome the challenges that their body puts in their way. But I guarantee you that every single one of them have, at one point, blamed themselves for not making the right decision when it came to their illness. Day in, day out, people with chronic illnesses have to engage in daily self-care. Whether it's asthma, epilepsy, or diabetes, we don't get to clock off our self-care the way that others clock off work. Now, I'm sure everyone here has felt burnout before. Yeah. The mental exhaustion from academics or social life. And whilst you get to go home and recharge your energy for the next day, people with chronic illnesses don't have that luxury. But that doesn't mean we don't get tired. In fact, some of our worst days aren't spent in the hospital. They're spent at home, frustrated with what our bodies fail to do, and trying to fix problems we will have to spend the rest of our lives with. Some people sink deeper and deeper into exhaustion, up to the point where they don't see the value in self-care anymore. This is what burnout means for chronic illness. And the long-term health consequences are detrimental. Amputations, blindness, being hooked on marijuana just to keep the excruciating pain of failing organs at bay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the brink of chronic burnout. When you opened your Instagram today, I bet you saw a whole news feed of beautiful, raw, sexy dishes. Right? Yeah, beautiful breakfast bowls waiting to be eaten. Every day, we are bombarded with messages that we could be doing more to achieve better health. That good health is defined as the actions you decide to take. The decision you make when you choose that morning run over finishing yesterday's leftover cake. But doesn't health then become commodified? It's a prize to be won if you buckle down and work for it. Because in our capitalist, liberalist system, doesn't hard work and determination always pay off? I'm not saying this with any sarcasm. Think about the times when you didn't try your best and you failed. So you look back on the result and you think, fair enough, if I had done this and this or this, then yes, I would have succeeded. In the world of health, it's no different. It's not uncommon for elderly people to go to the doctor and hear things like, if you hadn't eaten this, if you had done more exercise, then yes, your cholesterol wouldn't be so high. your blood pressure wouldn't be so high. Now, what this trains people with chronic illnesses to believe is that they are to blame for the mismanagement of their conditions, for what their body does or doesn't do. But why is that? We're always taught that accountability necessitates personal responsibility. So I grew up always thinking that I'm accountable for my blood glucose levels. I mean, after all, I'm responsible for what I eat, how much I exercise, even when I exercised. Just like how you are accountable for your work or your grades, because you're responsible for how you organize your time. So when my blood glucose levels weren't in range, I blamed myself. Essentially, I felt guilty for not taking care of myself the way that a normal pancreas would have automatically done for me. It took me a long time to realize that there are actually many biological factors out of my control. Things like the amount of stress, the effect of strong emotions, even, when I got sick. Non-diabetics can't predict their reactions to these, so why should I be able to? This realization, though, didn't stop the self-blame. The fact that this was my body and my disease, I felt responsible for the consequences of its management. But in this realm, accountability and responsibility are not the same thing. Let's think about it. This doesn't just apply to diabetes. I mean, we can look at other examples. A pregnant woman is accountable for her decision to adopt a healthy diet. She's not responsible if her body decides to miscarry. A grandfather with dementia is accountable for how he plays with his grandchildren. He's not responsible if he forgets who they are an hour later. And I am accountable for how much insulin I administer. But I'm not responsible for how my body reacts to this, along with other external factors out of my control. You see, being accountable for something doesn't necessarily mean you're responsible. Yet, medical professionals are being taught the exact opposite, I feel. We need to question this link, for it is precisely why we see people with chronic illnesses burn out. You're probably wondering how this simple mindset change, this disconnecting of accountability and responsibility, can revolutionize global health. The World Health Organization has projected that by 2020, 75% of total deaths worldwide will be attributable to chronic illness. Now, given how many external factors there are out of the patient's control, do we really want to be telling the 43 million people who will be at serious risk of chronic illness that the burden of self-care rests solely on them? Good self-care is very difficult to achieve independently. In fact, I think it would make their burnout worse. Now, the prevalence of chronic illness is only set to increase as we face more and more globalization and urbanization. So slowly but steadily, we are approaching the brink of chronic burnout unless we challenge this link between accountability and responsibility. By commodifying health, we are guilt-tripping those who are naturally disadvantaged in achieving this ideal. Remember the doctor that threatened to take my pump away? What if he chose to communicate his encouragement in a different way? Now, I'm sure he's provided many patients with valuable, life-saving advice before. But on that night, he was not saving mine. And that is because the medical profession hasn't realized that being accountable for something doesn't necessarily mean you're responsible. So I urge you to challenge this link, to make this mindset change right here, right now, in this very theater. It only takes 12 minutes, how long I've been speaking to you for. But the impact this will have on our approach to chronic illness will be enormous. Thank you.